Vanessa Carter froze with the wineglass still in her hand. Around her, soft jazz played through the luxury penthouse in downtown Chicago. Wealthy guests laughed near the balcony overlooking the city lights. Her husband, Ethan, stood beside her in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, smiling like he hadn't just destroyed 15 years of marriage with one sentence. "I think we should try an open marriage." The words hit harder than a slap. Vanessa stared at him, waiting for the joke, but Ethan simply adjusted his watch and took a sip of champagne. "You can't be serious." "I am," he replied calmly. "People evolve. We're not 20 anymore." She searched his face for regret, guilt, anything human. Instead, she saw relief, like he'd rehearsed this moment for weeks. Then she noticed the young blonde woman near the piano staring at Ethan with familiar eyes. Everything suddenly made sense. The late nights, the hidden messages, the sudden obsession with freedom. Vanessa swallowed the lump rising in her throat. "So you already found someone?" Ethan exhaled impatiently. "Don't make this dramatic. 15 years. Reduced to inconvenience." That night, Vanessa packed one suitcase, and left before sunrise. No screaming, no revenge, just silence, because sometimes the deepest heartbreak comes quietly. 3 weeks later, Vanessa sat inside a tiny cafe on the south side of Chicago, staring at her laptop with unpaid bills open across the screen. At 38, she had no career left. Ethan had convinced her years ago to leave her publishing job and help manage his growing business empire. The empire that was legally in his name. She rubbed tired eyes and checked her account balance again. $213.46. Rain hammered against the cafe windows. Outside, people rushed through the storm while Vanessa wondered how life could collapse so quickly. Then the little bell above the cafe door chimed. Every conversation inside instantly died. Men in black suits entered first, massive, alert, dangerous. Then he walked in, tall, dark charcoal coat, black leather gloves, calm eyes that somehow looked colder than winter itself. Luca DeSantis. Even Vanessa knew the name. Chicago's invisible king. Officially, he owned hotels, shipping companies, and luxury casinos. Unofficially, people whispered about judges disappearing, rival gangs collapsing overnight, and linguists fearing a single phone call from him. He wasn't just rich. He was power. The cafe owner nearly dropped a tray rushing toward him. "Mr. DeSantis, your usual table." But Luca stopped walking. His eyes had landed on someone. Vanessa. She immediately looked away. Wrong move. A shadow appeared beside her table seconds later. "Sir would like to sit here." Vanessa blinked up at the bodyguard. "There are empty tables everywhere." "Not anymore." Before she could answer, Luca himself pulled out the chair across from her and sat down smoothly. Up close, he looked even more intimidating. A faint scar crossed one eyebrow. His expression revealed nothing. He glanced at the bills scattered across her table. "Tough month?" Vanessa quickly closed the laptop. "That's none of your business." To her surprise, Luca smiled slightly. Most people feared him instantly. She challenged him without hesitation. "Interesting. I know who you are," Vanessa said carefully. "So do I." Her stomach tightened. "You investigated me?" "I investigate everyone." Rain continued pouring outside while silence stretched between them. Then the waitress arrived trembling with coffee. Her hands shook so badly that the cup slipped. Hot coffee splashed across Luca's coat. The entire cafe stopped breathing. One bodyguard instantly stepped forward. The waitress turned pale. I'm so sorry," Vanessa reacted before thinking. She stood quickly, grabbed napkins, and pushed the guard back slightly. "It was an accident." The bodyguard looked offended someone touched him, but Vanessa ignored him, gently helping the terrified waitress clean the table. "It's okay," she whispered. "Breathe." The young waitress looked seconds away from tears. Luca watched silently. Most people feared power. Vanessa protected strangers from it. Interesting. Very interesting. "Sit down," Luca finally said. Not to Vanessa, to the waitress. Everyone stared. Luca removed his stained coat calmly and handed it to a guard. "What's your name?" he asked the waitress. "SSFE. You're working alone during a storm," Luca observed. "Why?" "My co-worker's son is in the hospital." Luca reached into his pocket, removed a thick envelope, and placed it on the table. "For the hospital bills." Sophie stared in shock. "Sir, this is too much." "Take it." Tears filled her eyes. Vanessa looked at Luca differently now. Maybe the rumors weren't entirely true. Or maybe monsters sometimes had hearts hidden beneath steel. Luca turned toward Vanessa again. You defended someone you didn't know. She was scared. Most people only care about themselves. Vanessa laughed softly, though sadness remained in her eyes. That's probably why my marriage failed. Luca studied her carefully. Not the expensive clothes she no longer wore, not the exhaustion beneath her eyes, but the dignity she somehow still carried despite heartbreak. Have dinner with me tonight, he said suddenly. Vanessa nearly choked. Excuse me? It wasn't a question. There's no universe where that sentence works on normal women. Again, that tiny smile appeared. You think I'm dangerous, aren't you? Luca leaned back slowly. That depends who's asking. Dinner turned into conversation. Conversation turned into nights driving through Chicago under glowing city lights. For the first time in years, Vanessa felt seen, not controlled, not managed, seen. Luca listened when she spoke. He remembered small details. He sent soup when she got sick. He secretly paid the cafe owner. Nurse 6 months ahead to keep Vanessa employed. But the deeper she entered his world, the darker truths emerged. Men disappeared after betraying him. Enemies feared his name. Violence followed power like a shadow. One night Vanessa finally asked, "Why me?" Luca stood near the penthouse window overlooking the city. "Because you're the first person in 10 years who looked at me like I was human." The confession stunned her. This feared man. Lonely? You scare people, Vanessa admitted softly. I know, and yet you bought flowers for a waitress's sick nephew. Luca looked down quietly. My mother died because nobody helped her when they could. For the first time, Vanessa saw the wounded boy beneath the powerful man, and somehow, that terrified her more, because she was beginning to love him. Meanwhile, Ethan's perfect life collapsed beautifully. The young mistress emptied his accounts. Business partners abandoned him after financial scandals surfaced. Then one morning Ethan opened a newspaper and nearly fainted. A photo showed Vanessa beside Luca DeSantis at a charity gala. The headline read, Chicago's most feared billionaire donates $20 million alongside Mize, Tory woman. Ethan called Vanessa immediately. She answered calmly. You moved on fast, he snapped bitterly. Vanessa looked across the ballroom where Luca quietly spoke with orphaned children instead of politicians. No, she replied softly. I just finally learned my worth, and for the first time since leaving her marriage, she truly meant it. The charity gala ended at midnight, but Chicago still glittered beneath the winter sky like a city refusing to sleep. Vanessa stood beside the massive penthouse windows in Luca DeSantis's private tower, staring at snow drifting between skyscrapers. Behind her, soft Italian music played low through the room. Luca loosened his tie while pouring 2 glasses of sparkling water. No guards, no business associates, no violence, just silence. And somehow, that made him even more dangerous. You've been quiet since the gala, he said, walking toward her. Vanessa accepted the glass carefully. I'm still trying to understand you. That sounds disappointing. It's confusing, she corrected. Luca leaned against the marble counter. Because I donate to hospitals and orphanages? Because people fear you like your death itself. She looked directly into his eyes. But every time I see someone vulnerable near you, you become someone else. For a moment, Luca said nothing. Then he looked out across the city lights. My father believed fear was the purest form of power, he said quietly. He built an empire on blood. Vanessa listened carefully. When I was 12, I watched him beat a man nearly to death over missing money. Her chest tightened. I remember thinking, Luca paused. If I ever became powerful, I would never enjoy hurting people the way he did. Vanessa saw it then. The loneliness. The exhaustion. The invisible scars carried by men raised in darkness. You still became him, she whispered gently. Luca's jaw tightened slightly. Sometimes survival chooses for you? The honesty in his voice hurt more than anger would have. Before Vanessa could answer, Luca's phone vibrated sharply. His expression changed instantly. Cold, focused, dangerous. He answered in Italian. Vanessa didn't understand the words, but she understood the tension. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Luca ended the call and grabbed his coat immediately. What happened? One of my warehouses was attacked. Her stomach dropped. Attacked by who? Someone stupid. Within seconds, bodyguards flooded the penthouse. Vanessa watched the transformation happen in real time. The warm, thoughtful man disappeared. The Mafia boss returned. One guard approached carefully. Sir, the police already arrived. Luca's face darkened. And They found 3 bodies. Silence filled the room. Vanessa felt cold suddenly. This was real. Not rumors, not headlines. Death followed this man. Luca noticed fear flicker across her face for the first time. Something painful moved behind his eyes. "You should go home tonight," he said quietly. Vanessa crossed her arms. "Are you asking me to leave? I'm protecting you. By shutting me out?" His patience cracked slightly. "You don't understand this world, Vanessa." "Then explain it. You cannot fix this world with kindness." The words stung because they sounded less like truth and more like heartbreak. Vanessa stepped closer slowly. "Maybe not," she admitted. "But kindness might stop people from becoming monsters completely." Luca stared at her silently. No one spoke to him like this. No one challenged him without fear. A bodigua. RD interrupted carefully. "Sir, we need to move." Luca looked at Vanessa one last time before leaving. "Lock the doors after me." Then he disappeared into the private elevator. 2 hours later, Vanessa sat alone in the enormous penthouse, unable to sleep. Rain and snow mixed violently outside. Every news channel suddenly reported a deadly explosion near Chicago Harbor. No names released, no details confirmed, but Vanessa knew. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned off the television. Why was she still here? Why was she waiting for him? And why did the thought of him bleeding somewhere in the city hurt so much? At 3:17 a.m., the penthouse doors finally opened. Vanessa rushed toward the hallway. Luca entered surrounded by guards. Blood stained his white shirt. Her heart stopped. "Oh my God, I'm fine. You're bleeding. It's not mine." That answer somehow felt worse. The guards quickly disappeared, leaving them alone again. Vanessa stared at the blood across his hands. "You said you weren't like your father." Luca removed his watch slowly. "I'm not. 3 people died tonight." His expression hardened. 3 men who murdered 2 innocent dock workers. Vanessa froze. "What?" "They were moving weapons through my shipping routes," Luca explained coldly. "When my workers refused cooperation, they executed them." The room fell silent. Luca walked toward the sink and washed blood from his knuckles. "I gave the men responsible one chance to surrender peacefully, and they chose violence." Vanessa should have run. Every logical instinct screamed at her to leave this dangerous world immediately. But then she noticed something else. Luca's hands were shaking, very slightly. Very carefully, Vanessa walked toward him. "You didn't want this tonight." He laughed once without humor. "Want has nothing to do with my life." The sadness in his voice crushed her. Without thinking, Vanessa reached for his injured hand. A small cut crossed his knuckles. "You're hurt." "It's nothing." She guided him gently toward the kitchen chair anyway. For a man feared across Chicago, he obeyed surprisingly quietly. Vanessa cleaned the cut carefully while Luca watched her in silence. "You know," she murmured, "most powerful men would never admit they're tired." "I'm always tired." The confession barely sounded human. More like a soul carrying too much weight for too long. Vanessa finished wrapping the bandage. Then she looked up. Their faces were suddenly inches apart. The air changed instantly. Heavy, dangerous, emotional. Luca lifted one hand slowly and touched a strand of hair near her face. "You should stay away from me," he whispered. Vanessa's heartbeat betrayed her immediately. "Probably, but you won't." "No, Todd." For the first time in years, Luca looked uncertain. Not feared, not respected, just human. Then suddenly bang! A sniper bullet exploded through the penthouse window. Glass shattered everywhere. Luca grabbed Vanessa instantly, throwing both of them behind the marble counter as another shot tore through the room. Vanessa screamed softly in shock. Luca's entire body transformed again, predatory, focused, deadly calm. He pulled a gun from beneath the counter while guards stormed into the penthouse shouting orders. "Stay down," Luca commanded. More gunfire echoed outside. Vanessa's breathing became uneven. This wasn't a movie. This wasn't fantasy. People were trying to kill him, and because she stood beside him, they might kill her too. Luca looked at her. Terrified face. Something fierce flashed in his eyes. Not anger. Protection. "No one touches you," he said coldly. Then he stood up and walked directly toward the gunfire. Gunfire exploded across the penthouse floor. Vanessa pressed against the marble counter, trembling as shattered glass rained around her. Outside the massive windows, Chicago's skyline blurred beneath snow and flashing police lights. Men shouted through earpieces. Furniture overturned. Another bullet ripped through the wall inches above her. Then everything suddenly went silent. Too silent. Vanessa carefully lifted her head. One of Lucas' guards approached with a weapon raised. Clear. Her heartbeat still slammed against her ribs. Mr. DeSantis? The guard pointed toward the hallway. He's handling it. Handling it. Like murder and gunfire were business meetings. Vanessa slowly stood on shaky legs. The luxurious penthouse looked like a battlefield now. Broken glass covered the floor. Smoke drifted near the ceiling. One painting had been destroyed completely. Then she heard it. A man screaming somewhere deeper inside the penthouse. Not screaming from pain, begging. Vanessa's stomach twists. Ted. Before anyone could stop her, she followed the sound. But she kept walking, past the destroyed hallway, past armed guards, until she reached Lucas' private office. The scene inside froze her instantly. A bleeding man knelt on the floor surrounded by 2 guards, and Lucas stood in front of him calmly adjusting his cufflinks, like this was routine. The injured man looked terrified. Please, I was paid to do it by who? Luca asked quietly. I don't know his real name. Luca crouched slowly until their faces aligned. Then your life becomes significantly shorter. Vanessa had never seen eyes so cold. The assassin suddenly noticed her standing near the doorway. Wait! He shouted desperately. Please, I have children. Lucas' expression didn't change. The man pointed toward Vanessa. Ask her not to let him kill me. The room turned silent. Every guard looked toward Vanessa now. Luca followed their gaze slowly. Their eyes met. And for the first time since entering Lucas' world, Vanessa saw the terrifying truth. He would kill this man, right here, right now, because that was his world. Luca, her voice barely worked. He tripped. Ed to murder you. The assassin started crying openly. I swear I didn't know she'd be here. Vanessa looked at the terrified man shaking on the floor, then at Luca. You said you weren't your father. His jaw tightened instantly. This man put a rifle through my window. And now he's begging. He deserves consequences. Yes, Vanessa whispered softly, but maybe not execution. One guard shifted uncomfortably. Nobody questioned Luca DeSantis. Nobody. But Vanessa stepped directly into the storm anyway. The assassin looked at her like she was his last chance at life. Luca stood slowly. You think mercy changes men like him? I think mercy changes the person giving it. The words hit harder than expected. Even Luca looked caught off guard. Silence stretched painfully. Then Luca turned toward his guards. Take him downstairs. The assassin nearly collapsed with relief. Thank you, Luca's voice became ice again. If I ever see your face near this city again, mercy will not visit twice. The guards dragged the sobbing man away. The office fell silent. Vanessa exhaled shakily, only now realizing how hard her hands trembled. Luca walked towards. Right the shattered office window overlooking Chicago. You just undermine me in front of my men, I know. They'll see weakness. Vanessa stared at him carefully. Was it weakness when you paid hospital bills for a waitress? That's different. Why? Because kindness to innocent people earns loyalty. Luca looked at her darkly. Mercy toward predators invites betrayal. Vanessa crossed her arms. You sound exhausted defending violence. Something dangerous flashed behind his eyes, but not anger. Pain. You think I enjoy this life? No, she answered honestly. I think you're trapped inside it. Those words landed deeper than bullets ever could. Luca looked away first. The next morning, Vanessa woke inside the penthouse guest room after barely sleeping. Sunlight reflected off fresh snow outside, while news channels exploded with reports about the harbor attack. No mention of Luca. No mention of gunfire at the penthouse. Power erased evidence quickly. Vanessa wrapped herself in a sweater and walked toward the kitchen. She stopped instantly. An older woman stood near the counter arranging flowers into a crystal vase. Elegant. Silver-haired. Sharp eyes. The woman turned calmly. So, she said in a soft Italian accent, you're the woman making my son irrational. Vanessa nearly choked. Your son? The woman smiled slightly. I'm Isabella DeSantis. Luca's mother. Well, that explained the intimidating presence. Vanessa introduced herself politely while Isabella studied her carefully. You're prettier than the photographs. There are photographs. My son investigates everything, Course he did. Isabella poured tea gracefully. You know who Luca is? Vanessa hesitated. I know enough, and yet you stayed. I'm still deciding if that was intelligent. To Vanessa's surprise, Isabella laughed warmly. I like you already. They sat near the windows overlooking the city while snow continued falling softly outside. "He wasn't always this cold," Isabella said quietly after a moment. Vanessa listened carefully. "When Luca was little, he rescued injured birds from the street." A sad smile touched her lips. "He once cried for 2 days because a stray dog died." That image felt impossible compared to the man holding guns in dark offices. Then his father began training him. The warmth disappeared from Isabella's face. By 16, Luca understood violence better than love. Vanessa's chest tightened painfully. Can people like him really change? Isabella looked toward the hallway thoughtfully. "My son does terrible things." Her voice softened. "But terrible men do not build hospitals anonymously." Vanessa blinked. "Hospitals?" Isabella nodded slowly. "Women's shelters, orphan programs, cancer treatment centers." She stirred her tea calmly. "He hides most of it. Why would a feared mafia boss secretly spend millions helping strangers? Because somewhere beneath all the darkness, the boy rescuing injured birds still existed." The penthouse elevator suddenly opened. Luca stepped inside wearing a black suit, immediately stopping when he saw them together. "Mama. Luciano," Isabella replied smoothly. "Your guest made tea correctly. Marry her. Vanessa nearly spit out her drink. Luca pinched the bridge of his nose. "Good morning to you too." But Vanessa noticed something remarkable. Around his mother, the feared mafia boss became human again. Isabella stood and kissed Luca's cheek before leaving. At the elevator doors, she paused, then looked directly at Vanessa. "Be careful." "With his heart," she said softly. "Life already damaged it enough." The doors closed. Silence returned. Luca loosened his tie slightly. "I apologize in advance for everything my mother says." Vanessa smiled faintly. "She loves you. She worries too much. She thinks you're still rescuing injured birds." Luca froze. "Just briefly. But enough. You talked about my childhood. She talked about your heart." Tati's expression darkened slightly. "That's dangerous territory." Vanessa stepped closer carefully. "Why does kindness make you uncomfortable?" "Because kindness gets people killed." The answer came too fast, too rehearsed, like he had spent years convincing himself it was true. Vanessa looked up at him quietly. "And yet," she whispered, "you keep choosing it anyway." For once, Luca had no response. 3 days passed without gunfire, no attacks, no shattered windows, no blood on Luca's hands, and somehow that unsettled Vanessa more, because peace in Luca DeSantis's world never lasted long. She sat inside his private library late one evening, reviewing documents for one of his charity foundations. Rain tapped softly against the tall windows while jazz music plays. Wide somewhere deeper in the penthouse, Luca entered quietly, removing black leather gloves. "You're still working?" Vanessa looked up from the paperwork. Somebody has to stop rich men from overpaying contractors. One corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "You audited my charity accounts. You donated $3 million to a children's shelter that only needed one. I dislike half measures. That's not generosity," Vanessa replied. "That's emotional damage with a bank account." Luca actually laughed. A real laugh this time. Not cold, not sarcastic, warm. The sound surprised both of them. Vanessa stared at him. "There he is." Luca narrowed his eyes slightly. "Who? The man you hide from everyone?" The warmth faded from his face almost immediately. Vanessa's phone vibrated sharply inside his jacket. The moment shattered. Luca checked the screen, and the atmosphere changed instantly. Again. Always again. "What happened?" Vanessa asked quietly. He didn't answer immediately. Then, "My brother's in town." Vanessa frowned. "You have a brother?" "Yes." The single word carried enough tension to silence the room. An hour later, Vanessa understood why. The private elevator doors opened, and Chaos stepped out wearing a designer suit. Adrian DeSantis looked like Luca's reflection in a broken mirror. Same dark hair, same sharp features. But where Luca carried controlled danger, Adrian radiated recklessness. He walked into the penthouse grinning like trouble itself. "Well," Adrian announced loudly, "the rumors are true." His eyes landed directly on Vanessa. "She's beautiful." Luca's expression hardened instantly. "Careful." Adrian smirked. "Relax, brother. I'm complimenting her, not kidnapping her." Vanessa immediately disliked him, not because he was rude, because she could see pain hiding behind his arrogance. People who joked constantly were usually hiding something unbearable. Adrian kissed Vanessa's hand dramatically. Adrian DeSantis, the disappointing sibling. You're honest at least, Vanessa replied. He burst out laughing. Oh, I understand now. Adrian pointed toward Luca. She terrifies you. She challenges me, Luca corrected coldly. Same thing. Dardian wandered through the penthouse casually while pouring himself whiskey. Vanessa noticed Luca watching his brother carefully, like a man expect. Ting disaster. Finally Adrian leaned against the counter. So, he said casually, should we tell her? The room instantly became tense. Vanessa looked between them. Tell me what? Luca's voice turned sharp. Not now. But Adrian ignored him. The men who attacked the penthouse. He took a sip of whiskey. They weren't random. Vanessa's stomach tightened. Adrian looked directly into her eyes. They were sent by our uncle. Silence. Luca closed his eyes briefly, like this conversation had already gone wrong. Our uncle wants control of the DeSantis empire, Adrian continued. And since Luca refuses to become the psychopath our family expects, he shrugged. Civil war. Vanessa looked at Luca slowly. You never told me this. You didn't need to know. That's your solution to everything, she snapped softly. Protect people by lying to them. Luca stepped closer. I protect people by keeping them alive. Adrian raised his glass toward Vanessa. And now you understand why my brother hasn't slept peacefully in 15 years. The joking tone disappeared completely. For the first time, Adrian looked serious, even sad. He carries this entire family alone, eh? Dryan said quietly. Because if he loses control, his eyes darkened. Chicago burns. Vanessa looked at Luca differently now. Not as a powerful man enjoying violence, but as someone drowning beneath responsibility. Still dangerous, still feared, but drowning. Later that night, Vanessa found Luca standing alone on the private rooftop terrace overlooking the city. Wind whipped through his dark coat while snow drifted across the skyline. You should wear gloves, she said softly. I hate gloves. You wear them constantly. They remind people not to touch me. The answer hurt more than she expected. Vanessa stepped beside him carefully. Your brother loves you. Luca stared at the city below. Adrian loves chaos. No. She shook her head gently. He hides behind chaos because he's afraid. Luca glanced toward her. You read people too easily. You hide pain too badly. Silence settled between them. Finally Vanessa asked the question haunting her for days. How many people have you killed? The wind seemed to stop. Luca didn't move, didn't speak. When he finally answered, his voice sounded tired. Enough to stop counting. The honesty crushed her. Vain. SSA swallowed carefully. Do you regret it? He looked out across Chicago for a long moment. Every face stays with me. Not denial, not pride, regret. Deep, permanent regret. And somehow that felt worse. Then why continue? Because monsters exist whether I do or not. Luca's jaw tightened. The difference is, my monsters fear consequences. Vanessa understood then. Luca believed he was sacrificing his soul to protect others from worse men, a king standing between civilians and wolves. But even protectors eventually became exhausted by darkness. You don't have to carry everything alone, she whispered. Something vulnerable flickered across his face. Dangerously vulnerable. Luca stepped closer slowly until only inches separated them. Snow landed softly in Vanessa's hair. You make me want impossible things, he admitted quietly. Her heartbeat stumbled. What things? A normal life. The words barely sounded real coming from him. Before Vanessa could answer, a scream echoed from inside the penthouse. Both turned instantly. Adrian stumbled through the rooftop doors, clutching his side. Blood soaked through his white shirt. Vanessa gasped. Adrian, the two! Guards rushed behind him, shouting into earpieces. Sniper across the neighboring building? Luca caught his brother before he collapsed completely. Blood spread rapidly across Luca's hands again. Always blood. Adrian forced a weak grin despite the pain. Well, he coughed harshly. Family reunion officially ruined. Vanessa pressed shaking hands against the wound. We need an ambulance. No hospitals, Luca said instantly. Luca, he's bleeding. No hospitals, he repeated colder this time. Our enemies monitor every emergency room in the city. Adrian's face had turned pale. Very pale. Vanessa looked between the brothers desperately. What do we do? Luca lifted Adrian carefully into his arms, then looked directly at Vanessa. You save him. Move. Luca's voice thundered through the penthouse as guards rushed aside instantly. Vanessa followed him down the hallway while Adrian drifted in and out of consciousness in Luca's arms. Blood dripped onto the marble floor with every step. The sight terrified her. Not because of the blood, because Luca looked terrified too. He hid it well. Most people would never notice, but Vanessa saw the tightness in his jaw, the pan. I see buried beneath control. The fear of losing someone he loved. They entered a hidden medical suite Vanessa had never seen before. It looked like a private hospital built inside the penthouse itself. Cabinets of supplies, surgical equipment, monitors, emergency medicine. Vanessa stopped cold. Why do you have this? Luca gently laid Adrian onto the operating table. Because my world requires it. Adrian groaned weakly. That answer sounded dramatic even for you. Save your strength, Luca muttered. Vanessa quickly moved beside Adrian while guards sealed the room. One older man entered carrying a medical bag. Dr. Moretti, Luca said sharply. How bad? The doctor cut Adrian's bloody shirt open carefully. The room went quiet. The bullet wound sat dangerously close to his ribs. Bullet passed through, the doctor said quickly. That's good. Vanessa exhaled slightly. Then the doctor continued. But he's losing too much blood. Luca's expression darkened instantly. What do you need? The doctor checked monitors rapidly. We stabilize him now, or we lose him. Lose him. The words hit Luca harder than any bullet. Vanessa moved immediately. What can I do? The doctor looked surprised. Most women around powerful men panicked. Vanessa rolled up her sleeves instead. For the next hour, the world narrowed into blood, pressure, stitches, and survival. Vanessa held towels against Adrian's wound while the doctor worked. Luca never left his brother's side once. Not once. He stood there silent and still, blood covering his hands again, watching every movement like he could force Adrian to live through pure will alone. At one point Adrian opened tired eyes and looked toward Luca weakly. You know, he whispered painfully, getting shot really ruins flirting opportunities. Luca's voice cracked slightly. You're not dying tonight. Adrian smiled faintly. See? That right there. He coughed hard. That's love. Vanessa glanced at Luca. The feared Mafia boss looked seconds away from breaking apart. And suddenly she understood something important. The world saw Luca as powerful because they never saw what he loved. Because anything he loved became a target. Near dawn, Adrian finally stabilized. The doctor removed his gloves with relief. He'll survive. The tension inside the room shattered instantly. Vanessa closed her eyes briefly in relief. Luca said nothing. But his soul dares dropped slightly for the first time all night. The doctor left instructions before disappearing with the guards. Then silence filled the medical suite again. Adrian slept peacefully now beneath warm blankets. Vanessa washed dried blood from her hands at the sink. When she turned around, Luca was watching her, quietly, intensely. What? She asked softly. You stayed. The words carried more emotion than expected. Vanessa frowned slightly. Of course I stayed. Most people run after nights like this. You wanted me to run? Luca looked away briefly. Sometimes. Why? Because this world destroys innocent people. Vanessa walked toward him slowly. And what if I stop being innocent? His eyes lifted toward hers instantly. Dangerous question. Dangerous answer. You still can, Luca said quietly. But you can't? Pain flickered across his face. Vanessa suddenly understood something heartbreaking. Luca genuinely believed he was beyond saving. Like violence had stained him permanently. Like love was something he no longer deserved. Without thinking, Vanessa stepped closer and touched his blood-stained hand gently. You saved your brother tonight. I also built the world that Ost killed him. You didn't pull the trigger. No. Luca's voice darkened. But every war eventually reaches family. The exhaustion in him felt ancient, years old, maybe decades. Vanessa looked up at him carefully. You know what I think? What? I think you've spent so long surviving that you forgot how to live. For a moment, Luca simply stared at her. Then slowly, very slowly, he lifted his hand and brushed his fingers against her cheek. The touch felt almost hesitant, like even now he feared breaking things. You see parts of me nobody should trust, he whispered. Vanessa's heart pounded painfully. And yet, she whispered back, I still do. The distance between them disappeared slowly, naturally. Like gravity pulling two damaged souls together. Luca's forehead rested lightly against hers. Warm breath. Racing hearts. Silence louder than words. Then, okay, wow. Adrian croaked weakly from the bed. I survive a gunshot and wake up inside a romance movie. Vanessa jumped back instantly. Luca closed his eyes in visible annoyance. Adrian grinned painfully. Don't stop because of me. Near-death experiences made me emotionally supportive. You should be unconscious. Luca muttered. I was. It was boring. Vanessa laughed despite herself. The sound filled the room softly, and Luca stared at her like he'd forgotten laughter existed. 3 days later, Adrian recovered enough to walk again. Unfortunately, recovery also restored his personality, which meant non-stop chaos. You're in love, Adrian announced casually during breakfast. Vanessa nearly dropped her coffee. Luca looked murderous. Adrian. What? Adrian shrugged while eating pancakes. You stare at her like a starving man discovering food. Vanessa tried hiding a smile. Luca noticed. That reaction encourages him. Too late, Adrian said happily. I already adore her. The elevator doors suddenly opened. Every guard inside the penthouse stiffened instantly. An older man stepped out wearing an expensive gray suit and a silver cane. Cold eyes, controlled smile, dangerous presence. Luca's expression became stone immediately. Uncle Vittorio. Vanessa felt the entire atmosphere change. This was the man behind the attacks. Vittorio De Santis looked toward Vanessa with unsettling interest. So, he said smoothly, the outsider finally arrives. Adrian muttered under his breath, and there goes everyone. His appetite. Vittorio ignored him. His attention remained fixed on Vanessa. You've become quite important very quickly. Luca stepped between them instantly. Careful. Vittorio smiled faintly. Protective. How unusual for you. Vanessa sensed it immediately. This wasn't just family tension. This was war hidden behind expensive suits. Vittorio walked slowly around the penthouse like he owned it. You know, he said calmly, your father once warned me this would happen. Luca remained silent. He said love would become your weakness. Vittorio's eyes shifted toward Vanessa again. Looks like he was right. The threat hung in the air heavily. Adrian stood slowly despite his injury. Maybe leave before I forget I'm recovering. Vittorio chuckled softly. Then he looked at Luca one final time. The city is watching you carefully, nephew. His smile disappeared completely. And weak kings rarely survive winter. The elevator doors closed behind him. Silence exploded afterward. Vanessa looked toward Luca carefully. That man wants me dead. Luca's jaw tightened. Yes. One honest word, heavy as stone. Then he stepped closer to her slowly. But he'll have to come through me first. After Vittorio's visit, the penthouse no longer felt safe. Guards doubled across every entrance. Black SUVs lined the streets below. Even the air inside the tower felt tense, heavy with the warning of something terrible approaching. Vanessa stood near the kitchen late that night, unable to sleep. Luca entered quietly, removing his gun holster and setting it on the counter beside him. The sight still unsettled her, not because she feared him anymore, because she feared what the world forced him to become. You should rest, he said softly. Vanessa folded her arms. Your uncle threatened me. He threatened us. The single word changed everything. Us. Luca walked toward the window overlooking Chicago's frozen skyline. I spent years making sure nobody could ever hurt me again, he admitted quietly. Then you walked into a cafe and ruined all my plans. Despite everything, Vanessa smiled faintly. You're blaming me for your feelings. Yes. That seems emotionally immature for a mafia boss. For the first time in days. Luca laughed softly. Then the warmth faded from his face again. I need you to leave Chicago tomorrow. Vanessa's smile disappeared instantly. No. Vanessa, no. She stepped closer. I'm tired of men deciding what's best for me. This isn't your ex-husband controlling you. Then stop acting like him. The words hit hard. Luca went silent immediately. Vanessa exhaled shakily. You don't get to push me away every time you're afraid. I'm trying to keep you alive. And I'm trying to stay. Silence stretched between them. Then Luca finally admitted the truth he'd been avoiding. If anything happened to you, his voice lowered painfully, I wouldn't survive it. Vanessa's heart cracked open completely. This feared, untouchable man loved with terrifying depth. Maybe because he had spent most of his life without love at all. She walked toward him slowly and placed both hands against his face. You once asked why I stayed, she whispered. Luca looked down at her quietly. Vanessa smiled through tears gathering in her eyes. Because underneath all this darkness, she said softly, you're still the boy rescuing injured birds. Something inside Luca finally broke. Not violently, not loudly, just quietly. Like a man exhausted from carrying pain alone for too many years. He kissed her then, slowly, careful. Why? Like she was something precious instead of temporary. And for the first time in a very long time, Luca DeSantis felt human. But peace lasted only 12 hours. The attack came just before sunrise. Explosions shook the lower levels of the tower. Alarms screamed through the penthouse. Guards shouted into radios while smoke filled the hallways. Vittorio had made his move. Luca grabbed Vanessa's hand immediately. "We're leaving now." Gunfire echoed below. Adrian stormed into the room already armed. "Well," he announced breathlessly, "our family officially needs therapy. Get her to the safe elevator," Luca ordered. Adrian nodded instantly, but Vanessa grabbed Luca's arm. "What about you?" His eyes darkened. "I end this. No. Vanessa, you walking to violence every time because you think it's the only thing you're good for." Tears filled her eyes. "I'm asking you not to disappear into darkness again." Another explosion shook the walls. Time was running out. Luca touched her face gently. "If I don't stop him now, he never stops hunting us." Again that word. Before Vanessa could answer, Adrian suddenly cursed under his breath. "Problem. Everyone." He turned. Security monitors showed armed men flooding the lower floors. Too many. Even Luca realized it immediately. This wasn't intimidation. This was execution. Vittorio wanted the entire DeSantis bloodline erased before sunrise. Luca made a decision instantly. "Take Vanessa and leave." Adrian frowned. "What about you?" "I'll hold them here." Vanessa shook her head immediately. "Absolutely not." Luca pulled a gun from the table. "I built this empire," he said coldly. "I finished this war." But Vanessa stepped directly in front of him. "No." The room went still. Even Adrian stared nervously. Nobody told Luca DeSantis no during war, but Vanessa's voice never shook. "You think dying fixes your soul?" Tears slid down her cheeks. "You think sacrifice is the same thing as redemption?" Gunfire exploded closer now. Luca stared at her silently. Vanessa grabbed his hand tightly. "You taught me powerful people protect others." Her voice cracked. "So protect your family by living." Those words hit deeper than bullets ever could. Then suddenly, a new voice echoed through the penthouse speakers. "Enough!" Everyone froze. The security monitors changed. Vittorio Street. Good downstairs inside the main lobby surrounded by armed men. But something else filled the screen too. Police cars. Federal agents. Dozens of them. Vittorio's face twisted in fury. Adrian blinked. "Wait! What?" Vanessa looked confused. Then Luca slowly turned toward her. Realization hit him instantly. "You called the authorities." Vanessa lifted her chin slightly despite trembling. 3 nights ago. Adrian stared in shock. "You secretly contacted the FBI?" "I contacted every agency investigating organized crime in Illinois," Vanessa corrected. Luca looked stunned. "You betrayed me?" "No." Vanessa stepped closer. "I saved you?" The lobby cameras showed agents surrounding Vittorio's men from every direction. Years of hidden evidence. Financial records. Witness statements. Anonymous files Vanessa had quietly gathered from Luca's own archives. Not to destroy him, to destroy the war around him. Vittorio realized it too late. His empire collapsed live on camera. The old man looked directly toward one of the lobby security cameras with pure hatred. Then federal agents dragged him away in handcuffs. Silence filled the penthouse. Adrian slowly sat down. I'm in love with her too now." But Luca couldn't speak. For years he believed violence was the only language powerful men understood. And yet Vanessa ended a war without firing a single bullet. She walked toward him carefully. "You once said kindness couldn't fix your world." Luca stared at her like he was seeing sunlight for the first time. Vanessa touched his hand softly. "Maybe," she whispered. "Nobody ever tried hard enough." 6 months later, Chicago looked different. Quieter, cleaner. The DeSantis empire changed too. Several illegal operations disappeared permanently. Luca sold properties connected to violence and reinvested the money into housing programs, hospitals, and shelters across the city. News channels called it shocking. His enemies called it weakness. But ordinary people, they called it hope. One snowy evening, Vanessa returned to the same little cafe where everything began. Sophie, the waitress Luca once helped, now managed the place herself. Business thrived, hospital bills paid, life rebuilt. "You know," Sophie whispered while smiling toward the cafe entrance, "he still scares everyone." Vanessa turned. Luca stood near the doorway, in a dark coat while snow fell behind him. Powerful, dangerous, but his eyes softened instantly the moment he saw her. Vanessa smiled. Not because he became perfect, not because darkness magically disappeared, but because despite everything the world taught him, he chose love anyway. And sometimes for broken people, that was the bravest thing of all.